Hello and welcome to the Michael Mamas Show. I'm your host, Michael Mamas, and we're coming to you from Mount Soma, home of the Sri Sameshwara Temple in the mountains of western North Carolina. Last night, or into early this morning, I got home from the temple last night at a little after 3 in the morning. It was Maha Shivaratri, night of Lord Shiva. All these different things, they're not just, made up ceremonies. They're all related to the structure and dynamics of existence, really. That's a whole other podcast we could do at some point in time. But today, what I wanted to talk about is Nagadevata. I think it's a principle that isn't perhaps all that well understood and is certainly easily misused, I guess, in different cultures. I don't know. But I wanted to start by getting into this notion of the fabric of existence and the notion of the transgradient nature of existence. See, the idea is we have this, and we've talked about this before, the self-interacting dynamic of pure consciousness, pure isness, what in modern physics they call the unified field, that one thing that is the source of everything. And as a number of modern physicists have said, and certainly as the ancient seers and people like Swami Muktananda have said, it's just a field of pure isness, pure consciousness. Consciousness equals isness. And so within that self-interacting dynamic, a whole structure is constructed. And that structure can be viewed, in many different ways. It's multifaceted in nature. It can be viewed as a crystal. That's why in the sequential unfoldment of its structure, the ninth word of Rig Veda, in fact, is that means crystal. But it can also be viewed as a fabric, a woven fabric, and threads going through the fabric. And each of those threads can be viewed as a particular value, a particular mechanism. We're looking at it from the perspective of science, or the physics of it here, that weaves through the entire fabric, that embodies with it, carries with it a certain value, a certain quality. And so you could almost look at it like as that, in the sense that is foundational. You could look at it as the basis of existence. So there you would kind of view the unified field, the Veda, the Chaitanya is the word they use, as the foundation. But then that fabric weaves up through all the different levels of relative existence. It goes from that transcendental level, the absolute, you could say, through that very, very finest level, the finest feeling level, if you would, up through that level of the psychodynamic, psychoenergetic reason level, and then up through that energetic level up into the physical level. And through that, all these different threads, these different qualities, these different deva values are there, present. And so each of the different deva levels exist on all the levels of existence. And then they have they call them lokas, different levels of existence, different planes of existence. And then, for example, with respect to Nagadevata, Naga, there's another name that's associated with that value, that thread on each of those different levels. And on the most superficial level, the physical level, that quality of nature, because that's what we're talking about here is nature. That quality of nature manifests in the physical as a snake. Now, even when we say that, when we say a snake, you know, for most of us, I think there's kind of a creepy kind of a feeling of, you know, a snake. That's because not only because they're poisonous snakes, but also the way they, you know, kind of slither and things like that. A lot of people have a pretty strong aversion to the notion of snakes. But now, also, you see, that's sort of like one side of the coin. The other side of the coin, though, is like, well, if you think of like the medical logo, you know, there's the two serpents weaving up along the shaft. That's similar to, relates to, in the Vedic tradition, the Ida, Pingala, and the Sushumna that runs up the spine, the energy that goes up the spine, the very primal energy, the very fundamental energy called the Kundalini energy that is the source of life in the human physiology. And of course, in a deeper sense, Kundalini is the energy of all existence, you see. So that Naga value, you see, is so fundamental and such a powerful operator, if you will, such a powerful thread that weaves through all aspects and all different levels of life. And you can see it manifesting in different ways. Like, for example, a double helix in the DNA has that value. And so in the Vedic tradition, there's the notion of Shakti, life force, of Bala. Shakti is like the energy, and Bala is like, if good Bala means a healthy physiology. If you have healthy physiology, the Bala is strong. And all that is dependent upon the physiology having a healthy, if you will, relationship with that Naga value that comes right out of the absolute and wells up through all the different levels of existence. And it comes up through the different energy centers. I call them the different psychophysiological centers, the chakras. And we don't have to get too otherworldish when we talk about those. There's a very pragmatic value to the chakras, you know. We all know that the heart is an energy center. We don't think, if we fall in love, we don't say my elbow is swelling in love. No, my heart is swelling in love. If we are thinking, we know that we're not thinking with our knee, we're thinking with our head. You know, it's our mind. That's another psychophysiological center. And so, and these energies are all related and interconnected. Now, it's an interesting thing, too, because when we you see this on Sunday morning television or in church on Sunday mornings, it's very natural for people to go like this to connect spiritually. Why? Because those centers are associated with God above. But now that's an interesting thing too, because we were just talking earlier about how in one sense, because it's foundational, we can say that the unified field, God, the transcendent, is at the base, the foundation, and then the physical is on the surface. But in another very real sense, the way it manifests in the psychophysiology is that the base is in the physical. It's in the legs. It's in how we ground to the earth. And then the sense of God or heaven is above, like that. So, that's how all that works. And so then we have this whole other paradigm, this whole other understanding of health, of life. And we can hear that and we can understand that and say, oh, okay, that's cool, or we can, of course, reject it, which I think a lot of people do. Oh, okay, yeah, blah, blah, And then what do? We go and continue our life following the channel of the paradigm with which we're currently identified, which I think for most of us is more of like a classical Newtonian kind of a world. And then all the different cultures that you look at throughout history had their own paradigms, the ancient Egyptian, the ancient Greeks, the medieval times, the Vikings, and they all have their different gods associated with them. And it's not wise to too quickly reject those paradigms, because they're an infinite number of simultaneously valid, but at first glance, contradictory. Well, they are contradictory in a way. It's a paradoxical universe, so there are all these different paradigms. But what we tend to do is cling to a particular paradigm which limits our own understanding of life, our own understanding of existence, and it limits our relationship with the world and with life. And we call that truth, and we put on our blinders and reject everything else. So you see, in the Vedic tradition, it's not just about the fabric. It's not just about one paradigm or another. In fact, within the structure of the Veda, it accommodates, and in the different branches of the Veda, it addresses in great detail all these different paradigms, certainly including what's the popular Western paradigm of what we would call today Newtonian physics. You see, so this sort of a thing isn't something that we can say, oh, okay, I get it, I'm going to embrace all these different paradigms. Because what we're talking about here is how the mind actually functions. It's a physiological thing. You can't, for example, decide that you're going to be really buff and muscular, and then boom, you're buff and muscular. It's something that has to be developed. And in the same sense, the awareness has to be free to function in a more flexible way, and a manner that's free from the limitations and the conditioning that we have imposed upon it, oftentimes in the name of education.
Michael?
Yeah.
But could it be said that all these threads are present in every point, everywhere?
For sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an important point too. And it's a good point that you brought that up, Scotty, because it's not like one thread is over here, another thread is over there. The idea of that fabric is just to illustrate at one aspect of the whole dynamic. But what you're bringing up here illustrates another aspect of the whole dynamic. You could say that the Veda exists at every point in creation eternally. You see? So that's a very good point to bring up, Scotty. So all these analogies we use. Another analogy we can use is like, if you have a kind of like a distorted or a twisted relationship, so to speak, because you see, if we have a limited perspective, what that tends to do is askew or to kind of twist our relationship with the whole dynamic. It puts a little distortion in it. And that's kind of like, you can take a piece of glass, and then if you kind of melt it, it kind of twists, and then the whole image becomes kind of distorted or twisted. And then that's the way you view the world. And what that does then, if you function in the world with that kind of twist, then your very relationship with the world throws more twist into the whole dynamic. And another analogy that we've commonly used, right, Scotty, is the idea of the fishbowl. When global consciousness becomes distorted, it throws more pollution, if you will, into the fishbowl. And when that happens, the fishbowl just continually gets more and more polluted, more and more twisted. And the whole fishbowl, not just the fish themselves, so it certainly affects the fish, some more than others, but also the entire environment, the walls of the fishbowl, the plants in the fishbowl, the gravel at the bottom of the fishbowl, the water itself, everything. And that's what we have going on today. But now, see, there's a really great thing. called, well, in medicine, we call it homeostasis. If you cut your hand, there's an inner intelligence that heals the cut. And so the doctor's job really isn't to heal the cut. The doctor's job is just to, keep it clean and things like that, so that the inner intelligence, the homeostasis, heals the cut. And like that, the real healing for the planet itself, for the world itself, for all the craziness that's going on in the world today, the real healing is to facilitate that self-correcting mechanism, that inner intelligence. And it's interesting because even in, you'll hear, I've heard some Christian ministers even say that, the world's so messed up right now, the only thing that can heal it is God. And in one sense, you hear that and you say, oh, come on, that just doesn't make any sense. You guys way out there, But once you understand that there's that inner intelligence, and that's really what he's talking about, it's like, oh yeah, okay, it's the homeostasis. It's that inner intelligence that heals the cut. And that, in fact, is one of the challenges and one of the problems, I think, with religion today, is that it's not expressed in a way that to most people even makes sense. People need a deeper understanding of what in the world that means. Because, otherwise it's like, it just seems like too airy fairy la la land. I mean, are you with me there, Scotty? Anything you want to add?
Well, yeah. I was just wondering too. It's like, as these threads come up out of, the absolute, and then they manifest into us as individuals up at the top, that's what we're trying to do. Is, when they're talking about, becoming enlightened or finding God or whatever, it's to, plug directly into that value, which not been distorted as it comes out. Is that how would you put that?
Yeah, see, that's these things are, deeper than one might think at first glance. It's not like
Yeah.
all of a sudden, boom, you're enlightened, and so the Naga value is flowing perfectly, and the Ida Pingala Sushumna, all the chakras, everything is all perfect, and you're walking around like some perfect image of divinity, but what does happen is there's an aspect, you could even relate it if you wanted to certain tracks in the nervous system and in the brain that finally start functioning in a way where the consciousness is awake to that transcendental level. And I don't mean awake in some sense of, oh, we have some sense of it. We all have that. We all have some sense. We may not use the word divinity, but we have some sense of that there's something exquisite, something precious about our own inner being, and about the universal, and perhaps about the universality of that being. Even people that are atheists still have that sense. They just would frame it in a different language. Uh, and 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 uh, and and that is it's a major game changer, because in that moment of that full, we could call it a full awakening, and there, you see, can all be so misleading, because they're like an infinite number of different awakenings. Even a little kid, when they first learn how to do addition, it's like, wow, that's so cool, and the light bulb goes off inside, and it's like an awakening. And there are different all sorts of different awakenings, and there are spiritual awakenings. And oftentimes people have a certain awakening and boom, they think they're enlightened. But and you could call those little mini enlightenments if you wanted, playing with the language. But the Maha enlightenment is something very rare, and all too often people will pick up, a new, particularly in the West, to be honest, people will pick up a new age spiritual book, Be Here Now or whatever, and they'll read it and they'll get it, and so and I'm enlightened. It's just not like that. It's not that simple. Okay, you had an awakening, but it's so different. But what happens though, even after what we're talking about here is cosmic consciousness, when you have that awakening, there's still all sorts of different aspects of the physiology that can be refined and refined. And they even talk in Vedic literature about when it gets to the point where there's actually an absolute body. You see, what is an absolute body? That's when not just the awareness becomes full and clear and awakened to the absolute value that it is, not as a notion, not as a hunch or a feeling or a sense, but as a full awakening. But actually, the tissues of the body refine, 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 because you see the Naga value and the Vayu value. Vayu is like wind. And there's so many different qualities and aspects to the Naga value, so many different qualities and aspects to the Vayu value. Every joint has a different, unique value quality. Every single joint in the body, infinite number of different value values. And all of those can have a balance and an imbalanced value. Just like they'll talk about Lakshmi. Lakshmi is the goddess. A lot of people call her goddess of wealth. Well, not just money wealth, but wealth in every sense. Abundance of life, beauty of life. It can be likened to, if in the sense of weather, you might say that, I don't know, you might say Lakshmi is associated to a beautiful summer morning when all the vegetation is lush and the flowers are blooming and everything is just exquisite with dew, kind of like that. And so that's the Lakshmi value. But there's also then the Alakshmi value. Alakshmi is kind of like the Lakshmi value, the goddess value, if you will, in a home, even where the lifestyle is unhealthy. Maybe the people are, I don't know, drug addicts and into just very unhealthy life. And in that arena, then that's the Lakshmi value that's worshipped, if you will, and maybe consciously or unconsciously, is a Lakshmi, and you could say that, every deity, if you wanted, has that value, you could do that. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about the Nagadevata value. And that's when people even get in, there's all kinds of weird snake worship, or I don't know, different things that people do. And I don't know, that is kind of like the unhealthy Naga value, Am I making sense here, Scotty?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So there are ancient technologies in the Veda. They're described. It would be in the Shastras, Upaveda. And there are ancient technologies that explain how to maintain. And then you get into Ayurveda and all that, Upaveda. Anyway, there are ancient technologies that explain how to maintain the healthy fabric of life, how to maintain all the different values of divinity, all the different qualities, all the different facets of the diamond, how to clear the fishbowl, just different ways of saying. We're just finding different ways to help give an insight and a feeling for what we're talking about here. How to purify all that. How to, in Ayurveda, it's specifically focused largely on the human physiology and how to clear all that so that the physiology is functioning in harmony with what? That foundation. In harmony with what? Nature. The Veda is nature. You see, it's nature. Uh, uh, Now, what's going on in the world today? Um, we talked about, how, this whole thing about how people kind of lost touch with, the deeper meaning of religion, for example. And people hear, oh, what we need is God. And they don't, and they hear some preacher saying that, and it doesn't make any sense. That it's like, that's not going to heal things. What are they talking about? They don't understand. Uh, and so it leaves people floundering in life. And they start looking for deeper meaning, but they've lost touch with that foundation. And that's tragic. And so what they try to do then is they try to find different meaning. They try to conjure up different paradigms that can give them some sense that, okay, they do have a deeper meaning. They do have a deeper insight. And that's largely, what's birthed a lot of the craziness that's going on today. Um, uh, uh, for example, the whole woke thing is largely based on trying to create a deeper value system when touch with the foundation isn't there. And like I've said, you can justify anything with the intellect, and oftentimes it can be, at least in a lot of the people that are following that paradigm, they're well intended, but they're misled. And then, of course, we can get into that whole thing about, it was learned a long time ago, and it was implemented, goes all the way, Saul Alinsky, and way before that the best way to defeat a nation, and this, Khrushchev hitting his shoe on the desk at the United Nations back in, what was that, the 50s, and now the Chinese, and we will bury you and all that. And what did they do? They permeated the institutions, and there are even quotes from Chinese leaders saying that's what they're going to do, and that's what they've done. And so what do? They see a floundering nation of people that have lost touch with the foundation of life, and they've used that to undermine and uh, and creeping in like a thief in the night, really. And see, creeping in, what is that? That's a distorted, naga, you could say, unhealthy quality to the naga value, the serpent value, if you will, to overtake a whole nation. And it's going on, and it's very clandestine and very unhealthy, and it further distorts and compromises an entire nation, an entire culture. So you see, the whole woke thing, it's not just political, it's also cultural, it's social, it's racial, it's permeating all levels of life, and it's compromising our nation and our world. And it's strange because it's become so racist. Chairman Mao, Chinese Chairman Mao, it got so ridiculously racist. I mean, he was killing people because they wore glasses, or if they had accents, or if they were educated. I mean, it went on and on. And when you think about it, now, do you know that the United States, the federal government now has an agency? It's an equity team agency. It's all about equity. And it's a federal government agency, office, department. And it's the most racist thing that's ever created, in modern history since Nazi Germany, really. It's a gender policy council. It's actually, and I don't mean to get too political here, but this is just the way it is. It's headed up by Barack Obama. It's instituted by Susan Rice, who was, under Obama during his administration, and it's a thing about protecting every minority group. and so we get into the transsexuals, we get into the homosexuals, we get into, women, blacks, browns, this, that. Every minority group is protected except for one, which is interesting. Do you know what that one is, Scotty?
I'm sure white males or something.
Yeah, straight white males. And so now they're doing this thing where, and President Biden is determined to assure that every department has a equal and appropriate proportion of every one of these minority groups. It has nothing to do with qualifications anymore. It's about gender and race and so on and so forth.
Michael, on politics, I've talked for a long time that kind of the system or the structure that we have has morphed into something it's now broken. They've taken, so, but, how do we bring back into, I guess, into being something that's more in line with like natural law, or like with I don't know how you would put that, but just something, because we've got people, it's the people ultimately that are running this, that have changed this, that have broken the system.
Yeah, well, it's almost in a way, and I'm playing with words here, forgive me, but maybe it's even more accurate to say it's not broken. It's twisted.
Yeah.
And convoluted, and that's even in a way worse than broken, because if it's broken, okay, clearly that's broken. But if it's twisted and convoluted, there's a continuity to it still. There's a rationale to it.
Right.
And
well, how do we clear it out to get it, back to its base?
Well, funnily enough, and as ridiculous as it sounds to most people on the surface, and hopefully we clarified what it really means so it doesn't sound so ridiculous, but the truth of the matter is it's cleaning the fishbowl, which, like the Christian minister says, the only thing that's going to heal this is God. In other words, the self-correcting mechanism, awakening to that Chaitanya value, the homeostasis value.
So you think
facilitating the self-correcting mechanism. And how do we do that? That's what we're trying to do at Mount Soma. There is the technology there. Like I said, in the Veda, they explain how to do it. So let's do it. Why don't we do it? Again, what we talked about, paradigm identity. People are caught up in a particular paradigm. And, I was watching a commercial. I think it was about deodorant. And they were trying to sell this deodorant because it's a game changer. And it just struck me funny, the phrase game changer. Everybody wants that game changer, but they don't really want a game changer because they want to adhere to, in the big picture, the real ultimate game changer. The ultimate game changer is a paradigm shift, a new way of thinking, a new way of understanding life and existence. They don't want that. Not really. They want to continue to see things the way they see things, and they want it all to get fixed based upon that certain limited paradigm. And it's not going to work. It's not going to work. What we need is to expand and open our awareness to a newer way of thinking. And the technology is there. It's there in rigor. And the reason it's kind of fallen by the wayside and not even recognized is because it's just too foreign to people's thinking. It's not part of their current paradigm. And I'm not saying we throw away our rationale. In fact, the beauty of it is it does make sense. It makes tremendous sense. But people need to be willing to take a look at it and to work with it and to look and move beyond their current paradigm identity. There is so much going on in the news right now, and I'm exasperated. I want to talk about this thing. I want to talk about that thing. I want to talk about Russia and Ukraine. And it's just so well, if you have to take it upon yourself to look at the news and it's out there. Russia and the Ukraine, they could have negotiated this thing away in the very beginning, but they didn't do it. Why didn't they do it? Because Biden, this is just the truth, they wanted to use that whole situation to go after Putin. And they wanted to keep the war going. And that's been throughout our history. We did it in Vietnam. We did it in Afghanistan. We did it in Iraq. Where else do we do it? It's just what we do. And so we keep that tension going, and the military industrial complexes keep rolling along, making their money while we keep that tension, and all that while we're killing innocent people. I mean, it's just, the whole thing is just nuts, and it's everywhere, and it just keeps going on and on. And then, in this whole world, this whole nation of such brilliant people, and look who we have as president and vice president. I mean, come on, you have to face it. I mean, I hate to be so critical, but they're incompetent. And then Joe Biden recently got a physical exam, and he was assessed as vigorous, and they didn't even do a mental exam. They didn't even do a cognitive exam. And, oh, well, you're not a doctor? I mean, are you kidding me? Anybody can look at the guy, and the guy can hardly string a few sentences together. And, because people aren't doctors, then we're going to say, and then the whole vinyl chloride thing in that little town in Ohio, and all those trains, and all that leak of vinyl chloride, and they burn it, and ash, and the water is polluted, and then the EPA comes along and says, "Oh no, the water's fine to drink." I mean, you drink it, and then and the whole thing becomes so politically charged about, for example, pipelines. Pipelines are so much safer than trains. If you do get a leak in a pipeline, you don't leak, 10 million gallons of vinyl chloride. It's a leak, you find it, you patch it. There was a little bit of a leak, but it's nothing like that. But, it's not vogue to have pipelines, so let's truck it around in trains or big cargo ships. I mean, the whole thing is crazy. And also leading doctors, researchers from elite institutions like Stanford, Harvard, all over the nation. They say they know that the COVID vaccine is neither safe nor effective. In fact, they're saying that the more booster shots a person gets, the more susceptible they are to the virus. And it's out there. The research is out there. But the pharmaceutical companies are making billions of dollars. The whole thing is locked down. This is all wrong, and it's all crazy. And it's all why? Because the whole thing is twisted. The whole thing is distorted. The whole thing is a mess, and it's got to stop. And it's not that hard to stop. Vivek Ramaswamy, do you know who he is, Scotty?
No.
Oh, really? He's great. He's on the news sometimes, and he's written a number of books. Woke Inc. He wrote Woke Inc. And he has a website. But oh gosh, he's worth looking into. But he was saying that we have to just tell the corporations, and I don't agree with him on this, even though he's great, but he was saying we have to tell the corporations that they just have to stop dealing with China. And it's going to be hard on people, but we have to stop the shoes we wear, the telephones in our pockets. We have to stop letting the corporations get all those things manufactured in China. Well, the trouble with that is the corporations are functioning of, by, and for the money, and they even have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders to do what's cheapest. So, in my opinion, the only way you're going to get the corporations to do that is to make it is to impose things financially, and the most expeditious way to do that is with tariffs. Really, tariffs and
Well,
embargoes.
well, there's
Don't
some other things, Michael, that are happening. I've heard from there's a guy that does a podcast out of Colorado
yeah
that's talking about Russia and when you and China, but a lot of the stuff is moving out of China and into other places because the cost of labor has actually gone up for China.
yeah.
And like Mexico for skilled labor is actually cheaper than China right now.
Yeah,
And
and I agree
also
with that.
Mao
I agree
Mao
with that.
doing the one child thing, China's the working force is going away because they don't have
Right.
enough younger people. So I think a lot of that is being it's going to transition too. So
I agree with all that. But at
yeah,
the same time, and that's long term, at the same time, we could right now go a long way to shifting manufacturing and making these countries in United States and Europe and Brazil and things like that, we could make them a lot healthier if the federal governments would just step forward and do things to impose that upon their nations to make the nations healthier, right away. Because right now, I mean, you go buy something at the grocery store, go buy something at Walmart or wherever, and look at it. It's probably made in China, you know, and you're not going to change that by asking the corporations to please stop doing it. That's my only point,
yeah.
you know. And the vinyl chloride thing, to get back to that, you know, the EPA did not go in there to help all those people where all this vinyl chloride, which is highly toxic, highly volatile. And the EPA said, "Oh no, we only deal with." I think it was Biden actually who said that the EPA only deals with earthquakes and tornadoes, which is completely not true. And these poor people, they told them, "Oh, the water's fine to bathe and drink," and it's rainbow colored. I mean, it's ridiculous. But now, and that happened that where that leak was in a very red, very pro-Trump area. But now you've probably seen in the news Camp Lejeune in California, a very blue state. There was a leak in the water there. You know what the leak in that water was? Vinyl chloride. And they're going ballistic to clean it up. I mean, things aren't lining up here.
Is it true too? I heard that they're not giving them like any like support or something like
Nothing.
to like bring in different things to that.
Nothing. And the railroad company, which is worth $55 billion, is going around offering the residents $1,000 to settle. $1,000. Ridiculous,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, yeah, because somebody was saying that they're giving more aid to people in Ukraine than they are in Ohio or something. I don't know
Well,
for
the whole thing, and we just touched upon a few of them, the whole thing, the way it's all going is preposterous. And people are waking up, and they are waking up, and it's got to change, and it will change, and everything's moving in the right direction. In a sense, the good news is that this is a sign that the golden age is just around the corner. When the pendulum is swung so far in one direction, it's getting ready to swing back. And when it does, it picks up acceleration fast. And so we're entering a time now where things are going to accelerate in a positive direction very, very quickly. And we can be thankful for that. All right, Scotty, unless I left something out, well, we left tons out, but because we could go on forever. But
Yeah.
unless there's something more we should add now, I think we'll close. Okay, Scotty?
Yeah. No, that's
All
good.
right, so thanks everybody for listening, and we'll talk with you.